I'm Nadine Fosler and welcome to another episode of How To with Tjhoko Paint. Today I'm going to inspire you on how to decoupage an easy way with Tjhoko and clear glaze. So what you need is, first of all, patience. Second of all, enjoy the process. And third of all, you can't do anything wrong. I'm here to assist and to help. Very important when we decoupage is to decide on the medium that you want to decoupage with. It can be, for instance, a serviette. It can be a laser printed piece of paper or even gift wrapping paper. It can be a piece of fabric that you absolutely love, or it can be a design in the Tjhoko Decoupage fabric range. And here we have a beautiful selection of prints and pattern. Next, what you need is you need to decide what color you want to paint as a base. When decoupaging with serviettes, something that I can recommend is to paint a very subtle, plain, muted color as the background, as your print needs to be the hero of the project. When decoupaging with paper, there are no limitations. You can use any color as a base color. The same applies when you use fabric, but when you use the decoupage fabric range, it's also recommended to paint a very plain, muted, neutral, soft pastel color as a base coat. When decoupaging a serviette, after your paint has dried for a minimum of 4 hours, I will be removing the backing of my serviette so that I just have a single layer and the layer with a print on. I have already cut all these materials more or less to the size of the surface I'm going to apply to. Next, I'll be using Tjhoko Paint's Clear Glaze. I'm going to dilute the clear glaze as follows. I'm going to add 3 parts clear glaze to a mixing bowl. And I'm going to add 1 part cooled boiled water to my mixing bowl. So it's 3 parts glaze, 1 part cooled boiled water. Whatever is left over, I can pour back into an airtight container and use again later. I'm now going to paint the glaze and water mix onto my surface. The glaze acts as a glue. So I apply a coat of glaze mixed with the water. I put my serviette nicely in position on top of my wet surface. I use my hands to wipe away all air bubbles that might be trapped underneath. And you will notice when decoupaging with a serviette, because it's such a thin layer of paper, little greases do occur. But once it has dried, it's almost not visible. Next, I use an artist brush and I simply paint the glaze onto my serviette surface, and also use the artist brush to get rid of any more greases and air trapped underneath. So this is some patience that's needed just to make sure it's done nicely and evenly. The only thing that now needs to happen is it has to dry, and once dried completely, I will use a 100 grit piece of sandpaper at a 45-degree angle, and I will sand the edges so that everything is neatly rounded off. Next, I'm going to decoupage my paper. Important, if you want to decoupage a printed piece of paper, make sure that it has been printed with a laser printer. So I'm going to dip it completely in my mixture of glaze. Make sure it's wet everywhere. and I apply it onto my surface. Use my hands to press out any air, and a nice tool to also use is a foam roller. Roll over the surface. It picks up any excess glaze and it presses out any air. Once again, I will allow for my paper and decoupage to dry and use my 100 grit piece of sandpaper and at a 45-degree angle, sand away the edges. In our book, we have actually done this to create a beautiful and funky wallpaper design. So this can also be applied to a wall surface, on furniture, in a print, a pattern that you love. Next, we are going to decoupage fabric. Also important to bear in mind when you decoupage fabric is that some fabrics tend to shrink when they get wet. So I've cut this larger, much larger than the area that I'm going to decoupage onto, just to allow for shrinkage. I dip the fabric in my glaze mix as I've done with the paper. I'm just going to squeeze out some excess, but it's important that there's a lot of glaze evenly distributed on your fabric, because this is the glue that keeps everything in position. And I apply it onto my surface. Once again, the glaze will dry, and sometimes if the fabric is really very thick, you will rather use a carpet knife to trim the edges than sandpaper. Now I'm going to apply my decoupage fabric onto a very muted, lightly painted surface. Lightly in terms of the color is light, so that my pattern is the hero of my project. I'm going to first paint my surface in some clear glaze and water mix. My mixture that I've mixed right in the beginning, put my fabric sheet on top, paint some glaze over, allow to dry and trim the edges also with a piece of sandpaper. There's a lot of inspiration that we will share with you on areas where we've actually applied these various techniques. If you enjoyed, please like, subscribe, turn on those notifications, and remember, don't paint it, Tjhoko it.